It's time for the parade in Pasadena. Tradition meets college football action in one epic bowl game. And with DraftKings Sportsbook, you can make every play count. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on college football. Download the app now and use code Richard. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on college football. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code Richard. The crown is yours.
Welcome back to the Richard Sherman podcast. Oh, it's a black day in San Francisco, but a great day in Seattle, Mitchell. What a week.
What a week. What a weekend. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone. We were all blessed with some great football yesterday. Let's take it right off the top. The most recent game, Rich, I know, like you said, you had your ups and downs this weekend. Seattle with a big win. San Francisco, not so much. Richard, did you see this coming? San Francisco. Woo!
Mitchell, I cannot say I saw this coming. I did not see San Francisco turning the ball over 5 times, Brock Purdy getting sacked 4 times. Now, I knew this defense was one of the top in the league, creating pressure. San Francisco ended up losing Trent Williams throughout the game and had to shuffle their offensive line, and they got progressively worse to the point where they had no other offensive lineman left in reserve. But Lamar played a really good game. Like I said, the Baltimore defense created 5 turnovers, really, really held San Francisco's offense down. Christian McCaffrey still found some success, obviously, but Lamar Jackson was 23 of 35 for 252, 2 touchdowns, also ran it 7 times for 45 yards. Brett Urban had 2 sacks. Kyle Vanoy had a sack. Jadeveon Clowney had a sack, and a lot of other pressures. But the true linchpin this game, as he's been all season, was Kyle Hamilton. He was a menace. He was menace in the past game. He had 2 interceptions. He was rushing the passer. He was creating pressures. He had deflections. Marlon Humphrey got one. Patrick McQueen got one. Marcus Williams. Everybody got in on him, Mitchell. And it was probably the roughest game of Brock Purdy's career to date. 18 of 32, 255, 4 interceptions, no touchdowns. Brandon Ayuk had 6 for 113. George Kittle had 7 for 126. If you just looked at the yardage, you'd think this was a much better game than it was. San Francisco outgained Baltimore, but it did not matter because the 5 turnovers, you turn the ball over 5 times and don't get any, Mitchell, you're not winning that game.
I hate to say it, Rich, but this game looked all too familiar to when my Detroit Lions got absolutely obliterated by the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens look really, really good. And you called it. Their defense is swarming. Their offense is absolutely dynamic. Let's talk about Brock Purdy a little bit, because you were the one front line singing his praises, saying this guy is going to be the MVP. He deserves it. What are your thoughts now, Richard, on a Tuesday after what you saw last night?
Mitchell, I can't give it to him. You know, he obviously dropped to 4th in the rankings, but you throw 4 interceptions in one game in December, Mitchell, you kiss your MVP hopes goodbye. But the guy who did not have a bad game is Christian McCaffrey, and he was still very productive, had a touchdown, had 103 yards rushing, 6 receptions, 28 yards receiving. He continues to lead the league and all tied for the league with Raheem Mostert for total touchdowns by a non-quarterback. And then you got to give credit to Lamar Jackson and what he's done. You know, I've argued this on every show that I'm on. He just doesn't have the touchdown numbers that he had in previous years and that he had in his MVP year. His MVP year, he had 36 passing touchdowns, 7 rushing. He has 5 rushing this year and only 19 passing touchdowns. But still, a remarkable season. His team is number 1 in the AFC, number 1 overall with 12-3 record. They got to go play the Miami Dolphins. It's a home game where Baltimore's played really well, and I expect them to win that game. So they deserve a lot of credit, and he's the quarterback.
Well, Richard, let's focus again back on the 49ers, because they still are number 1 seed right now, but they got work left to do. They got to win out. I mean, because they got some other folks nipping at their heels. Let's not forget that. My Detroit Lions have an opportunity. The Philadelphia Eagles have an opportunity. It looks like the final week of this season, they're going to have to play the red-hot LA Rams, which you had a first row ticket to watch last week. Richard, I mean, this is not a layup game. There's so much on the line for both teams. Like, what do the 49ers have to do to get right to win out the rest of the season?
Well, they gotta stop the run, which they did all right in this game. They got to find a way to get some turnovers, to get some sacks. They put some pressure on Lamar Jackson, but the plays where they missed sacks or some of the biggest plays that he made throughout the night, scored touchdowns, made first downs, created extended plays, and really did damage. If they would have finished those sacks, then we may be talking about a different result. But at the end of the day, they just got to execute. They just got to execute. It's not a lot of things that you're not going to expect 3 balls to get tipped up in the air and intercepted in a ball game. George Kittle, I'm sure, on that first route in the red zone is going to run his corner route a lot deeper to occupy the safety so that window for that post route against too high safety can be open, because that was a problem in that route. George ran a flat out instead of a corner route, so it doesn't occupy the safety, so the backside safety gets no work. Kyle Hamilton, the great player that he is and the great season that he's having, saw that, easily baited Brock Purdy into that pass, intercepted it. So I think you can get a lot of these things corrected. It wasn't like a lot of these passes where Brock Purdy just making terrible decisions and throwing it to the defense. His arm was hit on the one to McQueen. The rest of them were tipped up in the air outside of the first one to Kyle Hamilton. So I don't think it's anything where you look at it and say, oh, this is broken. Like I said, they had over 400 yards offense, but the defense, Bosa had 3 tackles for a loss, and Javon Hargrave had 1 sack, but they got to finish that. They got to finish more sacks in order to win these ball games.
Well, Richard, let's take it to another NFC West team, the Seattle Seahawks. Your Seattle Seahawks are still alive and well. They have been flirting with disaster these last 2 games, but they have persevered. Richard, the Seattle Seahawks go on the road, knock off the Tennessee Titans. Their record at 5-9 coming in. I mean, let's not be deceived. Tennessee on the road is not a gimme win. Seattle gets a huge win. Let's talk about this. What do you think about the Seattle Seahawks right now?
Well, I think they're a dangerous team in these playoffs. They just got Geno back. He showed a little bit of rust early, but he really cooked in the second half. Really effective. DK Metcalf was clutch. Boye Mafe is back to his ways. 2 sacks in the game. Jaron Reed still having a career season. Bobby Wagner got him a sack and was flying all around the field. And you hear all the complaints of the Seahawks fans about this defense, but this defense played really well today against an offense that can get it done, and at times has gotten it done. Tennessee, on the other hand, Ryan Tannehill was limited. Derrick Henry had under 100 yards, but he had a touchdown. I think this team, clearly they beat the Detroit Lions in overtime. They had a tough game against the Dallas Cowboys. They beat the Philadelphia Eagles. So you talk about the teams they could be potentially matching up with, and they would feel good in a lot of those games, like they had a chance to win those ball games. Now, do you win every game in OT like they did and play like you did against Detroit early on? And is this Detroit team a different team? No question about it. But they should feel confident going into these games. Pete came up with a great game plan. Kobe Parkinson just bodied the DB for that touchdown, the game winner. Another last-minute drive at the end of the fourth quarter for the win, 2 weeks in a row. The Cardiac kids are getting it done, Mitchell. They are getting it done, and Pete Carroll is getting it done regardless of circumstance, regardless of who he has to coach. He's finding a way to motivate these guys, and they're winning ball games. So I think they'll be in position to win the next couple games. The Seahawks play the Steelers, a game they can win. They're playing Mason Rudolph or Kenny Pickett. I don't know who's going to be the quarterback this week, but I think that's a game they should be able to win versus Pittsburgh, especially at home.
Well, and they can't take their foot off the gas right now, Rich. It's do or die for this team, and they got to control their own destiny here. Win out, you get in. Pitt, it's going to be a tough game. Mason Rudolph looked very good this past week, but Richard, they got all the pieces to the puzzle to make any team sweat. K9, DK Metcalf coming along. Jackson Smith-Njigba has proven himself worthy over these last couple weeks. They keep this going. I can promise you, sitting here in Detroit, I don't want to see him in the playoffs. I most certainly don't want to see the Rams in the playoffs either, but we're going to have to face one of them more likely than not.
Time for another VLTED challenge. We're excited to be using the VLTED app, spelled VLTED. VLTED is a place where you can store your sports predictions and participate in cash prize pools without any entry fee. Download the app and join Richard Sherman's Week 17 pool for a chance to win $2,500 in cash prizes. Again, it's totally free to join the pool. All you have to do is answer the questions and risk confidence points on each prediction for a chance to beat me and walk away with some serious cash. Congratulations to our two winners from Week 13, Tyler Skeeters and Tyler Sauer. Last time, Mitchell won 2 out of 3 of our challenges and finished 12 units up to add to his lead. My goodness, what are we doing here? The first 1 to 50 wins our VLTED challenge. Mitchell, what's your first pick?
Richard, I genuinely am starting to feel real bad for you here, man. Do you want me to pick for you just to make things a little easier for you so you get a win this week? Or
this is luck.
Okay. Well, Richard, I hate to do it to you, and I hate to do it to our Seattle Seahawks audience, but I'm going this direction. The Pittsburgh Steelers go into Seattle, and they are going to cover 3.5 points against the Seahawks. Richard, I'm going to go ahead here and risk 7 units. Richard, why do you accept my vaulted challenge?
Mitchell, because the Seattle Seahawks and your guy K9 and Geno Smith are going to start getting the rolling. JSN is starting to roll. You talked about Tyler Lockett had one of his best games of the season, 8 catches for 81 yards. DK Metcalf is going to try to have himself a day. I hope they can block TJ Watt because I think they're going to win it, Mitchell, by 7.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see. Richard, my next prediction, and this is not very much so a bold one, but I'm taking Christian McCaffrey will have less than 1.5 touchdowns against the Commanders. I just think the 49ers are going to get right, get ahead early, rest some of their players like Christian McCaffrey. He might score 1, but he's not scoring 2, Rich. I'm risking 6 units here. Richard, why do you accept my vaulted challenge?
Mitchell, this Commanders defense isn't the one you want to bet with right now, Mitchell. It's not. And Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Shanahan knows the MVP odds and all that. They're going to want to win the game, but if they can give Christian McCaffrey a few touchdowns to help bolster his case, they're going to do it. And Kyle's that kind of coach. So I think he's going to have 2+ touchdowns. No question about it.
All right, the last one, and this is me bringing out my true Detroit hometown bias here, but I'm going this direction, Rich. The Detroit Lions will make the NFC Championship game. They might be playing in San Francisco against your 49ers, but they're going to make this NFC Championship game. I'm risking 4 units here. Richard, why do you accept my vaulted challenge?
Mitchell, I was hoping you would give me some layup of sorts. Mitchell, Detroit hasn't won the division, and when's the last time they won a playoff game? So they can win a playoff game, Mitchell. I want them to win a playoff game. I want the Detroit Lions to win a playoff game. But making the NFC Championship, Mitchell, come on now. Come on, let's be realistic. I think I'm going to accept this one. No question about it.
We shall see. The Detroit Lions, Richard, I think you're going to become a fan of this team before the end of the year. And
I am a fan.
All right. So there are predictions for Week 17. They are now locked into our VLTED app. If you want to prove you're smarter than your friends or Richard, even like I've proven all year, go ahead and download the VLTED app and use the challenge feature. And make sure to enter Richard Sherman's Week 17 pool. Not only do you have a chance to beat Richard, you have a chance to beat me. It is totally free to join, and first place wins $2,000. Remember, VLTED is spelled VLTED, and the QR code is right here on the screen. I know you got to be happy today. I know you had to be happy over the weekend. Anytime the Dallas Cowboys take an L, I just feel like it makes your heart sing a little bit. And they did just that in Miami. A little bit of a thriller. Miami comes back late, wins it 22-20. Your thoughts on this game, Rich?
Well, you can't necessarily say that the Dallas Cowboys played bad. Dak Prescott was effective. He was 20 of 32 for 253, 2 touchdowns. They didn't run the ball well. Again, Tony Pollard has not been the guy they thought he was last year. 12 rushes for 38 yards. CeeDee Lamb had another good game, a really huge play early in the game. That was a huge touchdown. He caught it, ran it in for a touchdown. Very dynamic. But defensively, it's been their problem on the road. They're 25th in takeaways on the road. and they haven't gotten them. They haven't gotten the sacks that they get at home on the road. Micah Parsons, again, just like last season, we're in the month of December. He has a sack and a half, and this is what he had last year in the month of December and January. So we'll see if he can surpass that number, but that's the problem. They need more production out of their best players, especially defensively, and they aren't getting it. Deron Bland started the season really hot with the interceptions. He hasn't gotten any in a few weeks. They need these turnovers to win these games. On the other side, Raheem Mostert didn't have the most productive game. Still got a touchdown to continue his season-leading 21 touchdowns, tied with Christian McCaffrey. Tyreek Hill has 9 catches for 99 yards. Tua Tagovailoa, 24 of 37 for 293 and a touchdown. No crazy numbers, but did enough to win the game. In this game, it wasn't one of those situations where they had to have it. This was one of those situations they had to have it, and they did. It wasn't a blowout game where they just skated and cruised to the finish. They were determined. It took a game-winning drive at the end by Tua Tagovailoa to win this game, and he did it. Raheem is the first back since Jay Ajayi to have 1,000 yards rushing for the Miami Dolphins. They're second in the NFL with 52 sacks. They're a team that's going to be formidable. They play the Baltimore Ravens next. That's going to be a really good game. That's going to be a game that could determine the number 1 seed in the AFC. And on the other side, the Cowboys just got to figure it out on the road. You know, they're 3-5 on the road, lost to some of the best teams in the league. But this was a battle of the teams that hadn't necessarily beaten the good teams in this league and had a reputation for falling apart against really successful teams, really good teams. Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys beat the Philadelphia Eagles to try to dispel that notion, but the Dolphins beating them kind of reinforces it again, especially on the road.
No doubt about it. And more likely than not, that's where the Cowboys are going to be in the playoffs, is on the road. So they got to right this ship. And they got to, we talked about it last week. We talked about it briefly earlier. They got a huge matchup against my Detroit Lions on Saturday night, prime time, next weekend. And Detroit has been hot on prime time, especially 4-0 this year. Richard, they're healthy. I mean, they're starting 5 offensive linemen. I've only played on the field together 6 times this year. They're 6-0 in those games. And they're going to be coming in aggressive, Richard. I mean, because there's a lot at stake here for the Lions. Whether they take the number 1 seed or not, that number 2 seed's still up for grabs. And Lord knows this team wants to play those first 2 games at Ford Field if they can. Let's take it to Detroit. They won their first NFC North division title since 1993, Rich. I mean, this is a team that was starving for success. This is a city, a fan base that has just been so famished for success. And it's finally here. They've got leaders in the clubhouse. And Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn. They got former players that are on this staff that are coaching these guys up week in, week out. With or without Kirk Cousins on the road, with everything on the line for the Minnesota Vikings, the Detroit Lions go in there and get a huge win. Richard, what are your thoughts on this Detroit Lion team?
Well, they're built the right way, Mitchell. You build it from the front to the back. You build it with the O-line. They did that. They got a quarterback that is really comfortable in Ben Johnson's system and Jared Goff and is playing at a high level. He's had some stumbles in this season, but what quarterback hasn't? They found 2 backs that really do well in their system, and David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And Jahmyr Gibbs looks incredibly explosive. He looks like the guy that they expected when they drafted him very early in the draft. They're finding a scheme that works for him. They're running the plays that work for him. He had 15 rushes for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. He and Sam Laporta, your guy, Mitchell, are only the second rookie duo to have 9+ touchdowns in a season in the history of the league. And that's incredible. Amon-Ra St. Brown, another holdover who they drafted, who's played really well. Second Lions receiver to have multiple 100-catch seasons. And the Lions are rolling. You talk about the guys, all these guys are playing at a high level, and you're not even mentioning the defense and how they've built and how they've held people down. This was a very important game against a division opponent. Nick Mullins threw for 411, 2 touchdowns. He's a quarterback that can get hot, especially when he's in this system, this Kyle Shanahan, McVay, Kevin O'Connell, West Coast offense. They got Justin Jefferson back. He had 6 catches for 141 and a touchdown. KJ Osborne had 5 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown. But at the end of the day, Kirby Joseph had two interceptions. Brian Branch, who's been a revelation this season and should be on the all-rookie team, had a sack and an interception. And these guys just believe in what Dan Campbell is preaching, what he's doing. They have a different kind of belief, a different kind of motivation, and they just look like a different Lions team than we've seen in the past. They have the most wins over the last two seasons in franchise history, Mitchell, at 20, and they have more games to go. So this just tells you the quality of the team that you have, and I think they'd have a great chance at winning this game. Obviously, Dallas is going to be a formidable opponent, especially in Dallas. They had not lost there, Mitchell. They're 7-0. I think they're on a 14-game winning streak, maybe 15 now. So this isn't going to just be a walk in the park. This win, if they can win in Dallas this week, that would give them a lot of confidence going into these playoffs. No question about it.
No doubt. And they got another guy that came out of absolutely nowhere for him this last month, Ife Melifonwu. And this game was looking a little iffy down the stretch, Rich, with Nick Mullins slinging the rock on a 3rd and 28 to Justin Jefferson. And all we thought in Detroit was, same old Lions. We're going to lose this game. Not so fast. Ife Melifonwu steps up. Huge interception. This guy had 2 sacks this week. He made some big plays over the last few weeks. Richard, we're finding guys in our depth that are able to take this team to new heights. They continue to get healthy. Sky's the limit. But like you said, going to Dallas is going to have a lot of playoff atmosphere to it. This is going to be the biggest test of their season. We'll see if they can persevere. Richard, let's take it to Kansas City. I mean, while everyone's enjoying their Christmas as a family, opening up gifts, we saw the first game kickoff at 1:05, and everyone's thinking, Kansas City, cakewalk, easy. No. The Las Vegas Raiders go in and play Grinch to the Kansas City Chiefs and steal a win on the road. Richard, let's start right here. What in the world is wrong with these Kansas City Chiefs?
Mitchell, it's a number of things. It's the lack of another playmaking receiver outside of Travis Kelce. And Travis Kelce is not having the best season that he's had in recent memory. He's as he said, and a lot of other people have said, he's been a little beat up this season. He's been a little beat up in his career. He has a hard time getting out of bed sometimes. His body is just aching, and you need somebody else to pick up the slack and take the weight. And every week you're like, is it Rashee Rice? But they're just too inconsistent. They're dropping passes. They're getting cute, fumbling the football. It was slippery out there. One pass, Patrick Mahomes fumbles, and it lands right back in his lap. Most teams don't have that kind of luck. He did. You got Pacheco fumbling. They lose that fumble. But you talk about Jack Jones, and he said, hey, if they can deal with the magician that is Patrick Mahomes, and we can cut the magic off, then this team is beatable. And he himself took it in his own hands with a pick six in back-to-back weeks to score one of the touchdowns they had, one of the 2 defensive touchdowns they had in back-to-back drives. And the other was the Chiefs trying to get cute. Snap it to Pacheco, hand it to Patrick Mahomes. And I don't know what the plan was after that, but they fumbled it. And it just looked like one of those plays that in the past, it would have worked and everybody would have been scratching their head, showing it on every highlight. Like, man, the Chiefs, they're doing it again. Look at this. And you heard whispers of the Raiders' frustration a couple years ago about the ring around the Rosie play that the Chiefs ran, and it just was embarrassing, and they just felt like they got disrespected. And so this time it felt like they took it personal when they even lined up to run that play. And they blew it up, scored a touchdown, said, hey, don't run these trick plays on us. We're not the same team. And I think it's really a cool game for Antonio Pierce.
No doubt.
And what he's trying to do, changing the culture of this team and changing the culture of this organization while he's auditioning for a head coach position. What are they going to do, Mitchell? Malcolm Kuntz had 3 sacks. Zamir White, who's been a revelation. You talked about Josh Jacobs being out. He still had 22 rushes for 145. The 4th-round draft pick out of Georgia had a really incredible game. But the Kansas City Chiefs just don't have the firepower that they once did to be able to make these mistakes and then overcome them.
Well, it's just wild. And you touched on it, Rich. I mean, it's crazy how one man that doesn't even play on the football field can impact a team so much. And that was Josh McDaniel. I mean, this team was blatantly held back. They got a lot of pit bulls, man. I mean, you got a guy like Max Crosby. You got a guy like Jack Jones. I mean, Richard, they're doing this with Aiden O'Connell at the helm, and it's being led by Antonio Pierce. The Raiders cannot possibly screw this up in the offseason. Antonio Pierce has got to be the guy going forward. Richard, they still got a shot in this. I mean, it's a long shot, but they still have playoff hopes. You know, if Kansas City loses out and they win out, they're going to win the AFC West, for God's sake. So there's one man in Las Vegas that is changing the trajectory of this organization, and it is Antonio Pierce. This is huge. You got to love to see it. As a former player, Rich, I'm sure you love to see a guy coming back and making such a big impact. Shout out Antonio Pierce.
Okay, football season is finally here. And here's one thing every fan should know. You can get anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. Well, almost anything. Because no, you can't get your dream running back for your fantasy team delivered with Uber Eats. But flapjacks, baby back ribs, and a cold six-pack? Yeah, you can definitely get those. Great pass protection? That's a no. Great pizza selection from your favorite places? Yes. Championship defense? No. Deodorant? Yep. A well-executed fake punt? No. Delicious fresh produce? Yes. Game-clinching turnovers? No. But pastry turnovers? You know, the kind with delicious apple filling? Oh, yeah. Because that's groceries. And get those delivered with Uber Eats, too, along with food from your favorite restaurants and other essentials. And the best part? You can get it all without missing a second of action on your TV. So this football season, stay planted on your couch and get anything, well, almost anything you need for game day by ordering on the Uber Eats app. Uber Eats, the official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol in selected markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details. Has there ever been a time you've been injured in an accident and not only were you in physical pain, but there were stress, headaches, and problems that followed? Do you wish you had hired an attorney? If you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. Playing corner in the NFL is hard. Submitting an injury claim with Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm with over 100 offices nationwide and more than 800 lawyers. With over $15 billion recovered for over 300,000 clients, Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting to get you full and fair compensation. Morgan & Morgan has been fighting for the people for over 35 years. Submitting an injury claim with Morgan & Morgan is so easy. If you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless you win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/Sherman or dial pound law. That's pound 529 from your cell phone. That's forthepeople.com/Sherman or pound law. That's pound 529 from your cell phone. This is a paid advertisement.
You talked about it last week. These Tampa Bay Buccaneers are getting hot. They're going to more than likely win the division. And I can almost bet that the Dallas Cowboys are not going to want to play them in the first round. They absolutely take it to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know you've been getting bombarded on social media by Jaguars fans for some of the stuff you said a few weeks ago, but you're looking pretty right to me, Rich. What are your thoughts on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning by 18 against the Jags?
Mitchell, I just based it off the tape, and they want to argue that it's an opinion and that I'm just hating on them, and now they've lost 4 straight, and I think they're starting to see what I've seen and what I told them that was the truth. Trevor Lawrence had 3 turnovers in the game, led to 21 points. Evan Ingram had a good game, 10 catches for 95 yards. Calvin Ridley was productive, 90 yards. Travon Walker had a sack. But Baker Mayfield is having the season of his life. He's 26 of 35, 283, 2 touchdowns. Mike Evans, who's a Hall of Fame receiver, and it's still like somehow he's underrated for some reason. He's leading the league in touchdowns. He's got his 10th straight 1,000-yard season. He had 7 catches for 86 yards. Yaya Diaby had a sack and a half. And it just seems like this team is figuring it out. Levante David had a sack. Antoine Winfield, who's having an incredible season, had a sack and an interception. And then Devin White, after all the controversy, after everything you heard, about the benching and the rotating and all this, had an interception that was huge in this ball game. And they're peaking at absolutely the right time. I told people David Canales was the answer in Tampa Bay, and he's a great coach and he's a great hire. He's proven that correct. I knew that it would be tough for this Jacksonville Jaguars defense to stop this offense with the weapons they have, and they did. They had a lot of trouble with it.
Well, we'll see what happens next week for them because they play the lowly Carolina Panthers. If they can't get a win against the Panthers, they're going to have to be waving that white flag. And to make matters worse, Richard, they're going to be featured on this week's Uber Eats segment, where we highlight the Uber Eats almost perfect defense of the game in the NFL. This week, we went with the Tampa Bay Bucks against the now lowly Jacksonville Jaguars, forcing 4 turnovers, including 3 picks off Trevor Lawrence. Bucks scored 21 points off those turnovers. Tampa Bay also had 4 sacks and held the Jags to just 37 rushing yards. I feel so bad for the Travis Etienne fantasy managers out there that had him on their squad. Don't want to see that during playoff time. But, Richard, that's this week's almost perfect defense of the week. And remember, you can order almost anything you want on Uber Eats, the official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Go ahead and order now. Richard, these Denver Broncos, I don't know what team is what with them. They looked hot. They went to Detroit, got smoked, and now they go and lose at home on prime time to the New England Patriots. The whole world got to watch it. I mean, where do we go from here with Denver? What are your thoughts on this team?
Well, Metro, I don't know where you go. I don't know where you go because I don't know the answer. You had the highlight of Sean Payton yelling at Russell Wilson. Now you got Russell Wilson played a pretty solid game, 25 of 37, 238, 2 touchdowns. You're playing Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, who have not been great offensively. And then you got Denver's defense that has been playing really incredible since that debacle against Miami. And they just kind of gave up a little bit more than they should to Bailey Zappi. 25 33, 256, 2 touchdowns. Zeke ran the ball for 12 for 27 yards. Not much, but he caught 9 catches for 33 yards and a receiving touchdown. I mean, Christian Baymore, 3 sacks in the game. That was the issue. That was a huge issue for Denver's offense. They weren't able to get their big-time playmakers involved. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, I don't even know if he had a target in the game. Sutton was pretty non-existent after a controversial deep pass where it looked like he caught it, and, they end up not giving it to him. But, yeah, I don't know where you go. At the end of the season, there's going to be a lot of questions to ask and a lot of things that need to be answered. Russell Wilson is still under contract with a big salary number, and he's playing well enough that most people think you got to keep him, and you got to keep pressing on, and you don't have anybody else in the fold to replace him. You don't have somebody waiting in the wings to say, hey, this is the heir apparent. You got to go draft that. And so I don't see them really making any huge moves this offseason, and if they do, I'm sure that'll be our story, and we'll be talking about it the next day.
Well, this team has kind of turned into the Spider-Man meme where everyone's pointing at each other. Who's to take the blame here? Sean Payton. I mean, I know his intent at the end of this game. Patriots are running the ball, trying to run out the clock, going to OT, and Sean Payton's over there calling timeouts, and it goes to bite him in the butt. Devontae Parker's wide open down the left side. Nice ball from Bailey Zappi. And they go ahead and Chad Ryland kicks this game off, 56-yard field goal to win it. There's a lot of finger pointing going on in Denver, and the winning has stopped, at least for the last 2 weeks. They still got a little bit of hope here. They're going to have to win out to make things interesting. But like you said, this might be a long, interesting offseason in Denver. A team that's also going to probably be asking some questions this offseason is a team in Cleveland. They're hot right now, Richard. They go on the road, beat Houston, albeit without C.J. Stroud, but Houston's got a lot to play for. Cleveland wins this game in commanding fashion. What are your thoughts on Joe Flacco right now? Because he has just blown this league up over the last 4 games.
I mean, I'm sure his Christmas was very merry And I'm sure Amari Cooper made sure to get him something fantastic for Christmas, because he has come in and featured Amari Cooper in a way they had not been able to feature him before. Amari Cooper broke the franchise record with 265 receiving yards, passing the great Josh Gordon. Third player with 4 games of 200-plus receiving yards, joining Megatron and Jerry Rice as the only other two. First Browns receiver with consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, which is crazy in itself, how long the Browns have been around. Joins T.O. as the only receiver to have 200-yard games with 3 different teams. And the Browns can clinch a playoff spot with the win on Prime Video this Thursday, and I will be there. Joe Flacco has been cool. He was on his couch drinking Coronas, eating Doritos like everybody else a few weeks ago, probably contemplating, is this the end of his career? Is this it? Do I have anything left? Is anybody going to give me a call? The Browns give him a call, and I'm sure they're glad they did, because he has reignited this franchise, reignited these players, this defense. This defense is back to playing the way they had earlier in the season, creating a lot of turnovers, creating disruption. Zadarius Smith had 2 sacks, but he's pushing the ball down the field. He's leading the league right now in passing yards per game. Obviously, it's a much smaller sample size, but he's 326.8 per game. One of the oldest players to have 3 consecutive 300-yard games. Tom Brady did it twice, and a few other guys. But you just feel bad for Houston Texans not having their franchise quarterback available to them. You can see the production is down in every capacity. Brian Hoyer is 11 of 17 for 62 yards and 2 interceptions. They're just not getting what they need from the quarterback position, and you hope they get their quarterback back so they can continue to have a chance at potentially winning this AFC South division. But man, this Browns team is fun to watch. It's fun to see where they were compared to where they are now, because to be able to weather the storm of losing quarterback after quarterback after quarterback and still be in a position to be not only playoff contenders, but still have a shot at potentially getting a top seed if Baltimore stumbles somehow, is incredible.
It really is. I don't think many saw the Cleveland Browns maintaining their winning ways when Deshaun Watson went down, but lo and behold, they might have just gotten better, Rich. And that is a wild story. But like you said, you're going to be in Cleveland next week. I'm sure you're excited to see it in person. And fortunately, this led us to this week's Making It Look Easy Player of the Week, brought to you by Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Richard already highlighted on it, but it was Amari Cooper. I mean, this guy couldn't have made it look any easier against Houston. Amari finished with 11 receptions, 2 touchdowns, set a franchise record for 265 with receiving yards. He's making a lot of fantasy managers happy this week. Amari became the 3rd player ever with 4 games of 200-plus receiving yards in their career, joining Calvin Johnson and Jerry Rice. Richard, this is Making It Look Easy, brought to you by our friends at Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. If you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan by going to forthepeople.com/Sherman, or you can dial pound law. That's pound 529. Winning in this league is hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is ridiculously easy.
It is easy. And that has been this week's Richard Sherman podcast summary. It's been an incredible week. Hope you guys had a great holiday season and Merry Christmas. I hope you have a Happy New Year and all your wishes come true. Make sure you set your New Year's resolutions, live by them, breathe by them. Everybody gets a new start January 1st, except these teams. We're still in season. So catch you next week. Can't wait.